Welcome to the Adaptive Clinicals webinar series. As always, we have different topics for our webinars, and our webinar series this year, for the most part, is going to revolve around prepping your data and getting ready for the AI revolution that has been underway for a couple of years. Today's topic is future of data, and it's a guideline for using AI and data interoperability in clinical trials. Of course, that is going to be our focus. AI is a very broad-based topic. And what we're going to do is we are hoping that by the end of this session, you'll have a good understanding of what's involved in your AI project and how to make sure that it is successful. My name is Sina Adibi. I'm CEO of Adaptive Clinical. I'm a technologist by training, and I've been in the healthcare and scientific informatics space pretty much all my career. And most recently, prior to Adaptive, I was CTO of PowerXL, where we were managing large volumes of data. With me is Eftim Pop-Lazarov. He's our Chief AI Officer at Adaptive, and he has a very long tenure. I'll let you look at the description of his profile and read it for yourself. But he's a really smart guy, and I can vouch for that because he and I, oh gosh, after what was it, about 15 years ago, we built a system to sift through volumes and volumes of data so that to help in drug discovery. AI wasn't fashionable moniker back then, so we used statistical models with algorithmic adjudication to decide what bits of information were most relevant. So I really have worked with Eftim, and he and I have kept in touch throughout. Eftim has captured his experiences and summarized it in an ebook. If you would like, at the very end, we have links where you can download the ebook and you can share it. We encourage you to share it with others. But really today, what we're going to do for over the next 45 minutes to an hour is basically add a narrative to the ebook. There is a lot of information that we wanted to put into the ebook, and obviously we didn't want to make it too onerous to read. So this is the class, if you will, and the cliff notes of the session are going to be available in the ebook. It is suitable for intermediate level ClinOps, data managers, data scientists, and IT leaders in pharma. And the reason we thought that it was suitable for that level and we wanted to bring it up is because there's been a lot of interest over the course of the last couple of years. Regulatory authorities have taken notice. They have come in and they have added layers of information that's very important for anyone who wants to engage in AI projects, especially in our field, to know. And we encapsulated all of that into this ebook. We do cover the regulatory requirements quite a bit towards the end. So if you are in process quality, or if you're in QA or QMS, there is a lot of good information for you as well. The beginning part is, as I said, for intermediate levels, and same for the regulatory piece of it. We're going to cover the 4 topic areas. One is basically we're going to explain why you should consider deploying aspects of AI. We are by no means espousing that you should relinquish everything and have one giant AI platform that does everything. As Eftim will explain to you, we think that AI has its place, human has its place, and the regulatory compliance obviously is omnipresent and it's overarching all of that. So we're going to go over why you should consider it. We're going to also talk about what are the prerequisites for getting started, what to do when you do get going, and Eftim has a really nice recipe, 6-step for things to consider. And at the end, we're going to go over the regulatory guidance that was just published in, I believe, 3 months ago. So it's the most current regulatory that there is. So with that, Eftim, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can take it away from here.
All right, thank you, Sina. I'm glad to kick this off. So let's dive right into it. Bridging AI in clinical trials. The question is, why is AI useful? And it comes down to the one key point. AI is useful because it tackles the complexity of modern trials. Because the trials are complex, they take a long time, they cost a lot of money, and they take a lot of effort. And that complexity is a growing challenge. There are more endpoints and variables every year. A phase 3 study today can produce more than 3.6 million data points, far more than we can manage manually. So that volume comes from a variety of data sources, systems that are used in the clinical trial, data management, EDC systems, CTMSs, ECOAs, wearables, they're all feeding into the process. So AI is useful because it's able to bridge and enable that processing and integrating that data very quickly. AI is great for tasks like extracting data, connecting data, running, for example, virtual trials, doing predictive analytics. So that efficiency basically can speed up the generation of insights, and at the end, what are the trials about? Get treatments to market faster. As an example, there was a study a number of years ago. Researchers from University of California used AI to analyze genomic data in cancer trial, and they, as was published in Nature Medicine, and they reduced the analysis time significantly. So number of weeks saved in critical phase. So this speed to market is vital, and AI can cut through that. Now the question is always, and I think we'll weave through this presentation, and it's one of the key themes in the ebook. Can we rely on AI? And the short answer for now is yes, if it's built on solid grounds, if it's based on robust data, not some assumptions. And bottom line, it's about data quality, and the AI reliability comes from that, and that's what our adaptive clinical bus has at its basis. So, I mean, I've done this for a number of years, and you know, I can attest, just like any technology, AI specifically, reliability comes from that foundation.
Very good point. Eftim, that was a staggering number that you shared with 3.6 million data points. Can you talk a little bit about the variety as well? Because, you know, we used to live in a world where data capture was quite monolithic. Everything came in from the sites, went into the EDC, and then came out of the EDC. And frankly, life was very simple. Now, you know, I've heard numbers of some 30 plus different systems actually have the data go through them, and they require basically analysis. I mean, there is valuable data in these 30 plus silos that need to be churned. So how would AI help us scale in that direction? Or maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
I think, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly what the strength of AI is. So I think the future of trials is basically trials that are digital, that are personal, and that are focused on data. And data. There are a number of tools, number of new trial designs, number of new traditional and non-traditional methods of generating data. I mean, one big example is we all have smartwatches on our wrists, and there are so many sources of data that can be used in trials, and there's just explosion of data. Now the problem with that much data is how do you turn raw data into something useful, into information? So it requires a lot of cleanup and a lot of concordance, and that's expensive. And if you are going to do that manually, you just can't. So that's where that's where you're trying to prioritize. Now, what AI helps you do is it helps you just not worry about that premature prioritization, harness all the data, and extract what's best out of it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Also, you mentioned a paper. I did want to mention for the audience that these references that Eftim is talking about are all listed at the end of the ebook. So if you do want to further your education on this topic, once you download the ebook, you'll be able to see that. Okay, go ahead, Eftim.
So yeah, I think so this basically furthers that kind of stresses that point about what you need for the AI to be effective, and that is basically clean and harmonized data. That's what makes AI work well in trials. So it's the solid starting point. If your data is all over the place, if it's missing pieces, it's different formats, you have to do everything manual, and it's error prone, and AI can't figure out anything. So it's pretty simple for AI. You give it good data in, and you get good results out. And so one thing, I just want to tackle head on, and it's part of the ebook as well. I think trust is a big issue just in general. I think we have seen with rising skepticism in public health topics, specifically efficacy of various treatments, anti-vaccination sentiments, so forth and so on. It just demonstrates how important trust is, and how easy it is to lose, and how difficult it is to gain. And so AI specifically, and specifically generative AI, does have a weak point as far as trust goes, because if not set up properly, it has the propensity to generate statistically sound but factually unsupported statements. And so that's what we call AI hallucination. And so there is the good news is that there is a way to deal with that. The scientific community has been focused on tackling that, both from a pure technological standpoint and from the standpoint of use of AI in life sciences. But what it means is the data has to be harmonized and has to be cleaned up. And the AI has to be rooted in good data, good patterns, good knowledge, and integrated well. And it's not all about AI. It's also about the humans in the loop. So the human expertise is key. So the human expertise tied with AI will ensure that AI can be accurate and can be relied on. A little bit about bias, just to kind of cover that, and we'll talk about that later on. Bias is also a term of trade and potential liability for use of AI. But there is also a different aspect of looking at bias, because it's an ambiguous term. When AI is used in specific domains, and it's rooted in proprietary knowledge and patterns that have been captured via doing projects successfully previously, like we have done with adaptive, that bias can be turned into advantage because it's actually what we call precision focus. Okay, so I think bottom line is just to keep this concise and short. It's all about being rooted in good data. So I think kind of furthering that, bias is a big thing, and bias in general is a big thing, and humans are key to managing it. So oversight when using AI is essential. It's not optional. You can't run AI without any oversight, letting it do what it needs to without check. So humans provide oversight. They need to review outputs. They need to ensure that the AI is sound. And ethical principles need to guide this. So it's about keeping the system accountable at every step. Fairness, inclusivity matter in trials. The trial has to serve all patients, not just some, and AI has to serve all patients, not just some. So humans are key to managing that. As I mentioned, there is a way to validly reframe perceived biases as specialized expertise. Think of it as tuning your AI for a purpose. So that focus can enrich what AI can do, especially in trials.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, the kind of the key message is that with the right safeguards, AI doesn't have to guess. It will stop on time and it will give you valid results.
You you mentioned a couple of things I wanted to share. I was at a conference, a couple of interesting facts that I'd like to share and see what your opinion is. One is when we say AI to us today, anyway, just because of OpenAI and everything that's been in the news, large language models basically that have AI that has been trained on what's publicly available is what we know as AI. And the facts was that some 80% of the data that these engines have been trained on is US centric. Consequently, if you are looking for patterns and insight, let's say in the rest of the world, you are being swayed towards how this framework was trained based on US domestic data. Also, if you parse that further and look at what's the data that's publicly available, that's scientifically accurate, it's mostly academic data. There is very little of real trial experience data, real patient experience data that is publicly available. In fact, there is a prohibition against patient data being publicly available. Proprietary drug information is behind firewalls of various pharma organizations and so forth. So these LLM models, right, Eftim, I don't know if you agree with this or not. In my opinion, these LLM models are already very much skewed. So one needs to make sure that you not only use the data that's publicly available, but that you further enrich it through a harmonization platform with the data that you have and is your intellectual property. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. I think 100%. I think there was a study from I think this kind of ties to that. I think there was a study from MIT also several years ago where they published in, I think, Nature Communications, where they basically compared AI that they trained specifically on cancer data in terms of how it predicts outcomes, and compare it to generic AI, which is kind of more horizontal, and the one trained specifically on the cancer data was performing better. Now, obviously, it wasn't better in solving New York Times crossword puzzle than the generic one, but it was better for this. So this is the trade-off, and what you just mentioned. And so for anyone contemplating using AI and relying on all these wonderful resources that exist in the open source, think about what do you bring to the table, what's your proprietary knowledge, what's your proprietary wisdom, what are your rules, because there's a way to marry that, and it's essential to make sure that you solve your problem in your domain better than anyone else, which is what we have done actually. I mean, we actually started from the get-go with the idea of having private, privacy-centered AI that's based on all the patterns, anonymized, secure patterns of how to connect all these proprietary systems that exist, and no information exists on that anywhere. I think we are the only ones who actually have it, and we have earned that through our sweat and work over the years.
Okay, great. Move on to the next one. So go ahead, Eftim, carry on, please.
So I think I think this kind of wraps up generically what I would say. I mean, we are talking about AI and we are talking about humans, and we are hitting on that. You know, bottom line is it's about making smarter choices. It's making better decisions. So the human AI collaboration is ideal to kind of blend that data power of AI with the judgment in clinical data management or just clinical judgment that humans have. And as we said, AI can process huge volume, 3.6 million data points. It can spot patterns fast. Humans bring the context, the experience, the oversight to make sense of it. So I think, I think long story short, tech alone, AI alone is not enough, but paired with people, it's powerful.
Mm-hmm. I was reading up at a forum for technologists, and they were basically talking about code generation for like different components, meaning that they would go to ChatGPT and say, write me a chunk of code in C++ or whatever Java that does something like this and that. And the consensus, and these people, this was actually a sort of a, let's call it a discussion chat room webinar, and these were pretty advanced, highly trained individuals in tech. And the consensus was that it'll get you started, but that you really do have to look at it very carefully. And they did question things like the sources of information and that sort of stuff. But everybody felt that it was an amazing productivity tool. It was not a displacement for programmers. So I think it kind of follows that we're not going to replace the data manager, data scientist. We're not going to replace the monitors. We're not going to replace the researchers, but we will make them that much more efficient so they can do more. And we certainly know how complicated clinical trials are becoming, and it's outstripping our existing staff's capacity. So that's why AI is being welcomed in our industry.
Indeed,
Okay, shall I move on?
it's basically a productivity multiplier and enhancer. Yep.
All right, now tell us, once we get into it, what do we do to make sure we don't go off the rails here?
So yeah, I think so. This is the rundown. It's straight from the ebook. So I think, I mean, the first thing is maintain trust. So I think that's about using clean, verified data, having good databases of, let's call them in technology, we call them databases of record, Here we are talking about the EDCs, the CTMS. Make sure that your sources of data for the clinical trials are trustworthy and good. Second point is work with AI. I think, what does that mean? Understand what it's doing and treat it as a tool, as a partner. It's not in control, you're in control. It's a support. The third point is pick the right tools. So I think this is key. Pick validated platforms that will streamline your integration. So there are a variety of excellent tools out there. There are a variety of tools that are not as good. And so, in data integration, for example, you can pick a tool that's excellent, that's horizontal tool for any use case. So that's sort of like low on the abstraction hierarchy. And there is a lot of work that you need to do to actually use it in specific domain of clinical trial data management. You can use a tool like Adaptive Clinical, which is already aware of all the semantics and all the complexities of what you're dealing with in terms of integrating the systems. So whether you're using it as a tool or using it to enable your AI, it will enable you to do it more effectively. The fourth one is it's all about patients. That's why trials exist. So focus on patients, and that will give relevance to everything else. So it's not about the AI, it's not about the EDC, it's about the patient. So if you keep that front and center, it will make everything relevant, as I say. I think the fifth thing is this thing changes very quickly. I think 5 years ago, we were not talking about AI. Using it, especially in life sciences, using it as frequently as we're talking today. So regulation change, as we'll see with the FDA later, and tools change. And finally, one of the most important points is you need your people to come along for the journey. So teach them, educate them, discuss with them what's the relevance of AI, what it means, and excite them about using it, and actually start building, start with something small, learn from doing a pilot. I think
that's a really good point, Eftim, and thank you for bringing that up. That to me is, I think that number 6 should be amplified. We view AI, in my opinion, we view AI as a technology problem, but it's really not. Well, it is a technology challenge, right? Because you get the IT who understands like servers and algorithms and statistics and whatnot to bring it in and deploy it. The piece that we really have to work on is what I call change management, and that is organizational change management. So we had data managers, monitors, clinical operations, and they were doing things a certain way for hundreds of years. I mean, literally, this AI revolution has been the single biggest shift in the way we operate. And that's the one thing that we really can't overlook, because you could bring in the perfect tool and it could be tuned exactly like the way Eftim mentioned it. But if your organization doesn't know how to adapt, hasn't been given time to adapt, hasn't been trained on how to adapt, and perhaps given time to formulate new ways of doing things, then the tool really is not going to be as effective. And we were at SCDM, and we talked about this at one of our panels, and that really got everybody animated in the audience, because everybody was in pursuit of understanding what is AI, and then they suddenly kind of stood back and said, oh my, this means that my 9 to 5 activities now have to change. Not in a bad way, but just realizing that your organization has to operate different. Frankly, this is true when you roll out any kind of technology, but AI is so sophisticated and it does so much of the decision making that you really do need to emphasize how they have to change, how the human in the loop roles change. In other words, from actually mechanically changing the data, our roles transform into monitoring and overseeing the machinations that AI brings to bear. I think that's a very, very big effort. And in my opinion, when you start your AI project, as soon as it begins to take shape from a requirement standpoint, start thinking about your organizational change control and how you manage that. Sorry, Eftim, I feel strongly about this. I had to get that message
Right
in.
on point, right on point. Thanks.
Go ahead.
All right, so I think so this is we don't explicitly cover this in the ebook, but I think it's very relevant because recently FDA came up with a guidance on how to use AI and how to, if you're going to use AI in the drug development process or the entire drug life cycle, actually, how to be prepared for a regulatory oversight. So I think it's quite a good document, but I think I'll summarize it here very quickly. There is the crux of it is a 7-step framework to make sure the AI is ready for regulatory decision. It's practical, so I thought it's useful that I just walk through each one of the steps very briefly, and then tie it into what we are talking about, our focus here. So I think so the kind of the first step is, I mean, the steps are very logical and obvious. So the first step is if you're going to use AI, what FDA calls it, define your question of interest, meaning what is prompting you to use AI and what are you asking AI to solve? Like, let's say, for example, you're trying to predict the patient risks from the trial data. So it kind of centers everything around that. So that's step number one. Step number two, what FDA calls it, define the context of use, which means basically spelling out how exactly are you planning to use AI, how it fits into your trial. Like, for example, if you're using it to embed it into wearables or into eCOA data, just about knowing the scope so that FDA can understand your intent. The third step is now that you know your problem and question of interest and context of use, what are you going to do actually? What AI specifically are you going to use? Like, what technology? What's your model? And specifically, what is the risk? So FDA terms this in terms of risk. So it follows from what you're going to do, but AI wants to know what is the risk. So if something goes wrong, think about what's going to happen, how bad it could be. So if you have a high risk use case like patient safety, then you will need to demonstrate tighter controls. The fourth step is what's your plan to assess whether AI is going to do what you want it to do? So what's the evidence and test the model credibility? So this is about testing and validation. Step 5 is build your AI, execute it, and then execute that plan, run those tests, put it through the paces. Step 6 is document the results, record it all, every test, every outcome, so that the FDA can see the evidence. And step 7 is feedback. Now that you have finished using your AI, determine the adequacy of the model and see if it's good enough. So that's basically the framework and a roadmap for trust. I think further at the end of the document, FDA has a number of ways to practically engage with how AI needs to be used. And so I'll go through each one of them. I'll cover a couple from each page. So if you flip to the previous one, Sina, I think, yeah, so I think, for example, the first option is Center for Clinical Trial Innovation. It's a program run by the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, and this is to help sponsors talk about AI in trial designs before submitting the investigational new drug application. So this is useful if you're thinking about using AI in terms of how to structure your trials. The next option, which is the complex innovative trial design meeting program, it's basically if you are gonna do some cutting edge new trial design and use AI for that, whether it's some sort of a basket trial or some adaptive trial, so to push the boundaries. So these are the ways to engage and talk through that with the FDA. If you go to the next slide. So here, couple of options. The first one is the Digital Health Technology Program. So this is for sponsor or anyone considering using AI in digital health technology, like for example, if wearables or apps are going to collect trial data. So it's a kind of a broad option at a high level if you're considering using something like that to start the communication and discussion. The next option, the next thing here is if you're going to use emerging drug safety technology program. This is about if you're going to use AI in basically post-marketing activities like pharmacovigilance. So once this is after trial, so once the drug is launched, there's so much data right now that one can gather from everywhere to detect adverse events. So if you're thinking of doing some use case there, this is the avenue. And if you flip to the last page, Sina.
Is that the I go
Yeah,
backwards or
yeah, it's
this is good?
no, actually it's the next one.
Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, so this one is couple of channels here. The first one is model-informed drug development paired meeting program. So this one is about if you already have your investigational new drug application or you're about to file it, you know exactly what your trial is doing, and you're thinking of using AI specifically for the trial itself. So unlike the options on the first page, where it was more about using AI horizontally across multiple trials from a tool perspective, this is for the specific trial you're trying to use AI. This is more focused on that. And finally, the last kind of entry here is the real world evidence program. So this is if you are trying to append or bring in some outside sources of information in your trial from EHR systems and things like that to kind of fill gaps into your data or to make better decisions, to kind of coalesce the data from what you're getting in your clinical trial with something from outside, some AI use case. This would be the place to do it. So I think so these options, I just wanted to give a flavor that the guidance provides you. The document provides you not just guidance of what to do and how to use AI, but there is also channels to engage with the FDA early, whether it's trial design, safety, tools like ours. They are there to help you get through it. And I just wanted to stress something about, bring it back to adaptive a little bit, clinical buzz. I think when I looked at this guidance and how we are doing our work, we are CFR Part 11 compliant, have been for years. We are very, very well aligned with every single step for our tool and for our use. So that's good to note. But specifically, I wanted to highlight step number 6 there, which was about documenting. So if you're going to use AI and you will need to document to FDA how you're using AI, make sure everything's traceable and the data is connected appropriately and everything is auditable and validated. Our tool is a tool that can help you actually demonstrate and do that. So that's where our tool, one of the use cases for our bus is exactly that, to help other technology makers as well as directly sponsors, CROs, to comply with that step.
Mhm. Wow, that's I gotta say that this latest guidance from the FDA has been the most comprehensive parsing out of different aspects of AI. Naturally, because of our interest in AI, we've been following the FDA guidances and suggestions and webinars that they've had and information sessions for, oh God, at least a few years now. This is really good. I would say, as Eftim talked about, it's comprehensive. My takeaway from looking at it was, as they say, start with the question. Sorry, what was the phrase, Eftim, that they use? Domain, question of the domain. Basically, what is it you're trying to do? I think that in itself is an admission that there is this huge amorphous cloud called AI that can do many things. But when you want to solve a problem, try to figure out what is that singular problem that you want to use perhaps a neural net to solve for you. Articulate it, define it, and then begin to look for AI implementations and go from there. And I think that inherent in those 6, 7 steps that Eftim talked about that came from the FDA is really sort of like the mental process that they're requiring everybody to go through. And naturally, them being the FDA, who are the ultimate arbiters of did you do it right, they're going to look for those 7 steps. So it's good for you to follow those. And I think they're very logical, very appropriate, and then obviously naturally document it and be prepared to present it. The last bit that I want to share is, again, I read somewhere and I can share these references with you. A large majority of new drug applications have backed up with real world evidence. So as the data in the EMRs and EHRs is becoming more readily available, you can draw a lot of insight from it that short circuits your research leading up to your INDs. However, that problem is huge because of the fragmentation. There are 700 by one account different EMR vendors out there. We cover some 35 EMR vendors. Even within the same vendor, the variety of configurations are so diverse that they could just as good be different organizations altogether. So there is great opportunity. There's a lot of data available. Think about how are you going to aggregate it and harmonize it. Are you ready for the conclusion, Eftim?
Yep, let's go and get into it.
Go ahead.
All right, so I think I mean, in summary, I would say, what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that the adaptive clinical bus, what I would say, makes clinical trials better with AI and human in the loop oversight. It connects data from digital health technologies like wearables, tracking patient vitals, pulls it together smoothly. It handles real-world evidence to think, like Sina mentioned, health records from real patients, making that data useful for trials. Works with electronic clinical outcome assessment tools, patient diaries and reports, tying it all into the flow of data. So the AI does the fast work. It harmonizes everything. Humans keep it accurate. That's what human in the loop means, technology and people working together. Adaptive clinical bus fits the FDA guidance perfectly, as I mentioned, the whole 7-step process. And it's all about speeding up the trials and keeping them strong.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Eftim, for sharing your knowledge and insights. As I mentioned, Eftim is quite an authority in this thing. He was implementing AI platforms and statistically driven data churning platforms before it was fashionable to call it AI. So he's certainly a trustworthy advisor. In terms of follow-on, I'm sure that we only scratched the surface here. In terms of resources that we're making available as a part of a public service to the community and the industry, I'm going to kind of linger here, press the pause button, write down these links. We have the actual ebook that is available. It's not very heavy reading, but it's a little bit more detail than what Eftim talked about. And more importantly, if you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out. You can go to our website and ask for a meeting if you want a meeting just with Eftim, just to pick his brain or understand and learn more. Please do that. No obligation for these meetings. If data harmonization and aggregation is a challenge, in other words, you've seriously considered AI engines and algorithms, and now you're realizing that your data is all over the map, you have multiple vendors, many CROs, etc., etc., then please also give us a call. We'll be happy to also show you how we make that big problem go away so you can focus on the intellectual part of rolling out the AI. And also, please don't forget the change management part. You have to bring the rest of the organization along with that. We don't do that. There are organizations that are very good at doing that. We have partners that we also bring into bear, and we'd be happy to share their insights with you. Eftim, any conclusion, last words? You want to say anything that you overlooked?
I think we're ready to sign off. I think reach out to us with any questions or ideas, as Sina mentioned. Thanks for joining. I hope this was valuable. Connect with us and stay connected.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much. And this is the conclusion of our webinar on artificial intelligence and the ebook.